So 2000 AD comics and Warhammer 40,000 have loads of similarities. They're both satire, they're ultra-violent, and they're very, very British. Today, I'm going to take a look at a few things that Games Workshop have borrowed from the 2000 AD comics. Okay, I'm ready for my first day of the job. Got my helmet, got my badge, got my book of lore. Let's do this. For the Emperor! Oh, shit. It's not really a secret that the designers of early Warhammer were inspired in part by 2000 AD. They've said how they collected the comics while they were designing it, and I've even heard they used to go out drinking in Nottingham sometimes together. And there's some of the writers have worked for both as well. Pat Mills, he did a lot of work for Judge Dredd. He also created the Redeemer comics for Black Library. And then the legend that is Dan Abnett, he's written for 2000 AD with Dredd, Durham Red and Rogue Trooper. And then in Warhammer 40,000 he bought us Gaunt's Ghost, and he bought us what is basically the best Warhammer 40,000 novel ever, which is Brothers of the Snake. So first up, the big ones. Judges. Judge Dredd is the law in Mega City 1. He is judge, jury and executioner. Adeptus Arbites are the law on the Imperial worlds. They are judge, jury and executioner. Check out the original models here of the Adeptus Arbites. You can see that they're helmets that only expose their chins, they've got eagle shoulder pads, and they've even got the same style of knee pad. None of this is too surprising, as Games Workshop actually made the Judge Dredd roleplay game, and they did some of the Judge Dredd board games, for example Judge Dredd Blockmania. Now, adding Arbites into Warhammer 40,000 meant that you could use the Judge Dredd models that Games Workshop already produced in your games of Rogue Trader. And, I mean, they had a much broader church, I think, in those days with Rogue Trader. They actually had rules for dinosaurs, and the reason they had rules for dinosaurs was so you could use your toy dinosaur collection in games. You know, models weren't as prolific in the mid-80s as they are now. So both groups have their own book of lore. This is the Mega City 1 book of lore. The Adeptus Arbites have their own book of lore too. Hardly surprising, you do need somewhere to keep all these laws that you're going to make your citizens follow. And they have guns. Adeptus Arbites shotguns were one of the few guns in the game of 40k that have different types of ammo. They have 3 types of ammo: solid, scatter and executioner. Dredd's gun, which is a lawgiver, has 7 ammo types. They have a standard round, which is also called an executioner, and then they have a ricochet, incendiary, high explosive, heat seeker and gas rounds. But I mean, I talk about this as well, the origins. Take a look at the new Adeptus Arbites. You can see they look a lot more like knights. You know, they've evolved from being what was very clearly a kind of Judge Dredd knockoff. They're now very much their own thing. So next up, Hive Cities. Judge Dredd is set in Mega City 1. It's a futuristic New York that basically spreads over much of North America. And it's surrounded by a wasteland known as the Cursed Earth. These are very similar to Hive Cities, especially if you look at Necromunda, where you've got, well, in this case, you've got billions of people living in a single hive, and then it's surrounded by the ash wastes. And in these wastelands, they're also filled with mutants, both in Warhammer 40,000 and in 2000 AD, and in both of these worlds, mutants are not tolerated. Now, nowadays, the Land Raider is named after Arkan Land. He discovered the standard template construct, that's the STC, for the Land Raider. He also discovered the Land Speeder. But it wasn't always that way. In the Cursed Earth saga, one of the early long-stretching Judge Dredd comic strips, Dredd sets off into the Cursed Earth. To protect him, he is given a super tank. This super tank is called the Land Raider. So this is in the early 80s, might even be the late 70s that the Cursed Earth saga happened, so it's well established by Rogue Trader time. The Land Raider also splits in 2. The front comes off and it becomes a killdozer, which wouldn't be out of place as an orc vehicle. I mean, if you look at orc vehicles, we have bone breakers, bone crunchers, lung bursters, brain crushers, bowel burners, so the killdozer would have been a good choice. But again, and this is a good opportunity to point out that Games Workshop aren't the only people who steal ideas. 2000 AD, they've stolen this idea from a book in, I think, 1944. There's a book called The Killdozer, which is basically about a bulldozer that runs amok. And the idea of going out into your wastelands in a vehicle isn't just for Judge Dredd and Necromunda players either. The film Damnation Alley sends a crew out in a Landmaster, possible inspiration for 2000 AD's Land Raider, possible inspiration for Games Workshop's Land Raider, to find the survivors of a nuclear war. 20th Century Fox originally intended for this to be their big summer hit, but instead it was delayed, and that meant they released their second choice. You may have seen it. And then there's Old One Eye. So sticking with the Cursed Earth saga, Dredd is in the Cursed Earth. He's attacked by Satanus, a ferocious Tyrannosaurus Rex. Satanus is then killed by its own mother. Its mother, this Tyrannosaurus hag as they call it, is Old One Eye. Old One Eye would later give you the first Tyranid special character. That's Old One Eye, who's a Carnifex that's lost its eye, it's been frozen in ice and returned. Now we have a 2-for-1 really. There's the Legion of the Damned and the Battle for Armageddon. So Dredd arrives at the site of the Battle of Armageddon. While at the Battle for Armageddon, he's then attacked by robots of the Legion of the Damned. So we have the Legion of the Damned in Games Workshop, Space Marines that have essentially returned from the dead, sort of vengeful spirits. The Legion of the Damned in Dredd, kind of they're robots that kind of reanimate and attack them. And then there's the planet of Armageddon, leading to the Battle for Armageddon, all the campaigns against Ghazghkull, Thrako, Yarrick. You know, really exciting stories. Again, I mean, these aren't original to 2000 AD. Legion of the Damned is a war film from the 60s, and the Armageddon, the Battle for Armageddon, is where the final fight will happen at the end of the Book of Revelations in the Bible. For the next couple of facts, I'm going to move away from Judge Dredd, but I'm going to look at another character of 2000 AD, and that is Nemesis the Warlock. Now, Nemesis the Warlock is from the comic Nemesis the Warlock. Nemesis the Warlock from the comic Nemesis the Warlock. Nemesis is called Thomas de Torquemada. Torquemada Coties is a 40k Inquisitor, which is basically Torquemada, named after the Spanish conquistador Cortes. But of course, Thomas de Torquemada is also a real-life Inquisitor, one of the really, really bad ones. So they could have got that. Where Nemesis's influence over Warhammer 40,000 gets a bit more interesting is when you look at the setting. So Nemesis came out in the early 80s. It came out before Rogue Trader. And the Thomas de Torquemada, he is the big bad guy leading a human empire. And this human empire seeks to just crush and destroy all of the aliens and mutants. He even has this kind of strapline, which is be pure, be vigilant, behave, which you can compare to, you know, purge the unclean, suffer not the heretic to live. It's the same kind of war cry as we've seen with Space Marines in Warhammer 40,000. And the main setting of Nemesis is termite. Now, the termites are the humans, and they live in, well, hives, just like they do in Warhammer 40,000. All the people live in hive cities. Thomas de Torquemada also has his own army, and his own army are called the Terminators. Now, again, I mean, mid-80s, the Terminator film comes out, but to have a force of Terminators, you know, it makes you think of Space Marine Terminators. And also, this comic is really kind of brings us the science fiction meeting fantasy, or more importantly, the kind of sci-fi meeting the imagery of the Catholic Church, which, you know, we very much see in Warhammer 40,000. But the one thing about Warhammer 40,000 that really flips on its head, so Nemesis, he uses chaos magic when he's fighting the evil Inquisitor. He's using chaos magic, and also he himself is a demon, so he's fighting an evil human empire. Warhammer 40,000 swaps this round, so what we have is an human empire now that is fighting demons and the forces of chaos.
So I'm sat here watching TV, editing this video to show it. Anyway, what I realised suddenly is this original Adeptus Custodes model. Take a look at this. Now, it's a bit odd. It's shirtless. He's got a cape. He's got this weird mask, although that becomes the pointed helmet. If you look at the Thomas de Torquemada, the Inquisitor from Nemesis the Warlock, and you look at the artwork of him, and you compare it to this model, then I think the inspiration is pretty clear.
Thanks for listening. If you've got other ideas that you can think that Games Workshop have borrowed from the 2000 AD comics that you'd like to share, please shout up in the comments and let us know. Please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers.